Let's take a walk and talk about God.
What is a good shepherd? What's the difference between David as a brave young shepherd and Jesus as the good shepherd? Did Jesus die for his sheep voluntarily? Let's understand how good a shepherd Jesus is. Let's look at what it means to be the good shepherd in John 10, verses 11 through 18. In John 10, verse 11, we read, "I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep." The word good also means beautiful of heart, and the word shepherd is exactly the same word as pastor. A reason for his goodness is also given, that he will expose himself to any danger for their safety. When the wolf comes, he would still remain to protect them. We have a literal example of such a good shepherd in David, who protected his flock of sheep from a lion or a bear. More than facing danger, Jesus laid down his life for his sheep. The word pastor is one of the least used words for a church leader in the New Testament, but a very meaningful one. Whereas other church leadership roles carry meanings like envoy, servant, older person, teacher, and overseer, the word pastor means a shepherd. Every human pastor is an assistant to Jesus. In larger churches, assistant pastors or small group leaders become the hands-on pastors of the flock. All pastoral care is vital because there's nothing more important to Jesus than his flock. Human pastors are inadequate and totally incapable of providing what Jesus would. Yet it's a privilege to love and be loved by the flock of Christ. In John 10, verses 12 and 13, we read, "But a hireling, he who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees. And the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. The hireling flees because he's a hireling and doesn't care about the sheep. A hired hand or wage worker doesn't own the sheep, nor cares like Jesus does. He doesn't fight the wolf, but runs. False prophets or other predators come and take sheep by force, not sparing the flock. Human pastors come and go, but Jesus will never leave." In John 10:14 we read, "I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and am known by my own." Psalm 23 is a picture of life under the good shepherd. I once knew a shepherdess who taught me the difference between a sheep farmer and a shepherd. She knew her sheep by name, and they knew her. She didn't drive them like a sheep farmer would, but called them and they knew her voice and came to her. A bond of trust exists between shepherd and sheep. To a stranger, all sheep may look alike, but to a loving shepherd, each is an individual and cared for individually. In John 10:15 we read, "As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep." We might ask, how is the two-sided intimate knowledge between Jesus and his sheep? His answer is to compare it with the mutual knowledge between him and his Father. Those of us far removed from ancient agricultural practices may not understand the love of a shepherd for his sheep, but perhaps we can relate in some ways if we've ever had pets that we loved and spent many hours with. The love of this shepherd is so great that he willingly dies for his flock. John 10:16 says, "And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. Them also I must bring, and they'll hear my voice. And there'll be one flock and one shepherd." Jesus describes one flock, but not one fold or courtyard. And he described one shepherd, Jesus, not any human leader. Mark found sheep in Egypt, and the Coptic Church became a separate sheepfold. Thomas, Thaddeus, and Bartholomew also did the same in Assyria. Later, Thomas did the same in Kerala, southwest India. Competing Roman and Eastern Orthodox claims of being the one true church are not borne out by history. All Christians are one in Christ. John 10:17 says, "Therefore my Father loves me, because I lay down my life, that I may take it up again." The Father loved the Son from eternity, and that love is culminated and fully justified because He's the Good Shepherd, and because of His voluntary readiness to sacrifice Himself for the sheep. His desire was to bring the whole world back to the Father. Jesus laid down His life of His own free will and had the power to take His life back again. The Good Shepherd dies, not to leave the sheep defenseless, but to rise again and be the shepherd of more sheep coming into the flock. John 10:18 says, "No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This command I've received from my Father." Nobody, neither the Jews nor the Romans, not even the Father, took Jesus' life from Him. His submission and death was entirely voluntary. He voluntarily went up to Jerusalem, knowing that He would die. He said that Pilate would have no power unless God gave it. The fact that Jesus had power to take His life again shows His divinity, and He voluntarily fulfilled the commission from the Father. I grew up spending summers on my uncle's sheep farm. Though I learned a lot about sheep, I didn't learn much about shepherding. Later I became a pastor of a rural church with many sheep farmers. Though I learned a lot more about sheep from them, I still didn't learn much about shepherding until I met Robin. She was a shepherd. There's a difference. Sheep farmers have thousands of sheep, but Robin had a small flock and knew each one by name. Sheep often flee a sheep farmer, but when Robin took a small can of grain and shook it, they came to her, and they knew her voice. That's an advantage of small churches. Jesus is like Robin. He's the Good Shepherd and calls us into His flock to be cared for individually. Soldiers go to war voluntarily. Police officers voluntarily sacrifice their safety. Parents sacrifice for their children. Missionaries sacrifice equity, savings, and personal safety to go overseas and spread Christianity. Even retailers sacrifice privacy in order to be able to make money. Everyone sacrifices something so that we can live together in peace. Medical doctor Commander Edward Jewell wrote in The New Yorker in 2003 that he treated enemy prisoners of war. He soon realized that could be his job for the duration of the war in Iraq. The greatest sacrifice is the one who lays down his life for an enemy. Jesus died while we were still enemies. As a young shepherd, David bravely fought lion and bear, but Jesus is the Good Shepherd who died for His sheep. Jesus died voluntarily and lives again so that we might have life through Him.